Imagine walking into a dark wood conference room where your family's masks finally fall. Your parents are smiling at your pain. Your sister claps at the sound of $6.9 million. And you, after years of caregiving and straight A's, are handed a single dollar. Some families crown a golden child and cast a scapegoat. But on the day of the will reading, a sealed letter exposes the truth: who loved power, who loved image, and who loved a human being. Today, I'll show you how an inheritance didn't just transfer money, it rewired a family's psychology. That night, I returned to my grandfather's house. The study was still intact, as if he were alive. The mahogany bookcase, the desk covered with a thin layer of dust, the faint smell of tobacco lingering in the air. I stood before the wall, safe holding the silver key Parker had given me. When I inserted the key and heard the dry click, my heart pounded. I suddenly remembered the last time he held my hand, saying, "You will understand everything when the time comes." Perhaps this very moment was what he meant. The heavy steel door swung open, and inside were not gold or cash, but strangely simple things: a few leather-bound notebooks, a small wooden box, and an old black USB stick. My hands trembled as I opened the first notebook. The paper had yellowed, the familiar slanted handwriting still there. 2003. Catherine was praised at the family party for her new dress. Jessica won the state academic competition today, but no one bothered to ask. My heart aches. Why can't Richard and Eleanor see it? Favoritism is corroding this family. I kept reading year by year. 2008. Jessica works part-time at the university library, still keeps a 4.0 GPA. Catherine went to Italy for 6 months to find inspiration. Her parents sent her money regularly. I'm beginning to fear Catherine will never learn the value of labor. 2015. I can see Jessica being pushed aside. At Christmas dinner, everyone only talked about Catherine's new boyfriend. Jessica stayed silent the whole time, and I saw the sadness in her eyes. I regret not intervening sooner. Each line peeled away the fog in my memory. Everything I had ever felt, abandonment, injustice, loneliness, was now confirmed by his own words. I was not paranoid. He had seen it all. I plugged the USB into the old laptop in the room. Dozens of folders appeared, each labeled 2010, 2011, 2012. I opened the year 2018. Inside were scanned emails between my father and my mother. "Richard, we need to find a way to limit Jessica's share. She has no business sense. Giving her money is just wasteful." Eleanor. "Yes. Only if Catherine has full control will the family's image be preserved. A token amount for Jessica is enough." Another file was a chat between Catherine and my mother. Catherine. "I hate how Jessica pretends to sacrifice. She only takes care of Grandpa to win favor, not out of real love." Eleanor. "Don't worry, she won't get much. $1 is already too much for her." I felt my whole body trembling. These words were undeniable proof of betrayal. I opened the wooden box. Inside were things that made me burst into tears. A stack of photos of me as a child, mostly small moments I thought no one had noticed me reading in the corner. Me standing on stage, receiving an award, me playing chess with him. A pile of old newspaper clippings from the local paper, all about my academic achievements, science awards, and volunteer work I had joined. And finally, handwritten letters from him to me, never sent. In them, he called me the silent light of the family. One letter read, "Jessica, you think you are invisible, but I have always seen you. I kept every clipping, every photo, because they prove you are the only one preserving the true values of the Morgan family. Never doubt that." Tears streamed down my face. Since childhood, I had longed for acknowledgement. And now, it was right in my hands, clear and undeniable. For a child overlooked, the greatest healing is not money, but being seen. The materials he left behind were medicine for my wounded soul. They proved my efforts were not meaningless. My love was not alone. From a therapeutic perspective, this is called a corrective emotional experience, an experience that repairs painful memories with positive proof. Sitting in the middle of the room, my limbs went weak. A part of me wanted to throw all this evidence in my parents' and Catherine's faces to make them pay. But another part heard his voice in my head. Love has boundaries, not revenge. I sat for hours, sometimes bursting into tears, sometimes laughing bitterly. The $1 bill was still in my wallet now, no longer an insult, but a beginning. I closed the notebook, tucked the USB and the wooden box into my arms. A question erupted in my mind. Would I use this truth to retaliate or to heal? The answer would decide not only my future, but the future of the Morgan family. The Morgan Foundation building stood in the center of the city, not far from the headquarters of the manufacturing empire my grandfather had once built. But unlike the cold atmosphere of power, my father was used to the foundation's office was bright, filled with natural light, its walls covered with photos of scholarship ceremonies, youth startup projects, and images of Howard smiling with the community. When I walked in, 15 staff members were already waiting. They were a diverse group, some young with laptops, some with graying hair but bright eyes, all sharing the same curiosity. In their eyes, I saw 2 layers of emotion: hope, because my grandfather had trusted me, and doubt because I was still so new. The first to approach was Sophia Williams, the executive director. A dark-skinned woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed, but with a friendly smile. "Jessica, we finally meet. Howard spoke about you often. He always believed you would bring fresh air here." I shook her hand, feeling the firm grip. Sophia wasn't an employee waiting for orders. She was the pillar, the one who had kept this ship steady through the storm of my grandfather's illness. Sophia led me through the office, introducing programs as we walked. The Future Leaders Scholarship Program each year supporting 120 students from disadvantaged families. The Small Business Incubator providing seed funding and mentoring for community startups. The Local Development Fund offering grants to small businesses in underdeveloped areas. I passed the achievement wall, hundreds of young faces, small companies that had survived handwritten thank you letters. My throat tightened. This was what my grandfather had quietly built, and now he trusted me to carry it forward. That afternoon, the foundation's meeting room saw the Morgan family gathered together for the first time. My father wore a tailored suit, his face tense. My mother sat with arms crossed, her heels tapping the floor. Catherine arrived 10 minutes late, latte in hand, looking bored. Sophia opened the session. "As Mr. Howard instructed, each of you will take on a specific role in the foundation, both to repay past debts and to contribute to the community. Allow me to announce Richard Morgan, Father Corporate Partnerships, responsible for building cooperation with companies. Eleanor Morgan, Mother Fundraising, organizing charity events. Catherine Morgan, Community Outreach, building relationships with schools and youth centers." I glanced at each of them. My father nodded slightly, as if weighing whether the role was worthy of him. My mother smirked faintly, perhaps already imagining herself on stage at gala events. Catherine muttered, "Seriously, I have to meet with high school kids." I answered right away, "Yes, Catherine, that's the job, and it's just as important as any other role." Taking a deep breath, I spoke clearly. The Morgan Foundation will no longer be a place for unlimited spending. From now on, everyone will follow 3 rules: clear KPIs for each position, weekly reports submitted directly to Sophia and me, quarterly evaluations. Anyone who fails to meet standards is considered in violation of the will's conditions. The room fell silent. I saw my father squint, my mother frown, Catherine's eyes wide in disbelief. My father asked, half-mocking, "Daughter, are you planning to turn your family into your employees?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Not mine, grandfather's. This is the only way to preserve the legacy he left." Sophia stepped in firmly. That's correct. These are legal provisions. If not followed, all benefits will be void. Sitting in the chair of authority, I couldn't help but remember childhood, the times I was ignored, the awards I received, but no one mentioned. Now, in a strange twist, I was the one supervising the very people who once treated me as invisible. The feeling was strange, both sweet and bitter. But I knew if I let myself slip into revenge, everything would collapse. My task was not to teach them cruel lessons, but to build a system of boundaries. From a psychological perspective, these roles were a kind of social exposure therapy. My parents and Catherine were used to consuming money status attention. Now, they were forced to contribute. This rewired the brain's reward system. Instead of dopamine from luxury goods or hollow praise, they would learn to gain reward from seeing others helped from real impact. The question was, could a person addicted to privilege endure such therapy? The meeting had barely ended when Catherine pulled me out into the hallway. Her voice was sharp. What are you trying to do? You expect me to paste posters at high schools? My friends will laugh me to death. I stayed calm, Catherine. If you don't do it, you lose everything. This isn't a game. She bit her lip, then blurted out the familiar line, I can't handle pressure. I've never really worked in my life. I looked straight at her, speaking slowly. Then this is the time you start. That night, I sat in my new office, staring at the KPI board. I had drafted the number of partnerships my father must sign, the number of events my mother must organize, the number of community programs Catherine must complete. I asked myself, someone pampered since childhood, who has never truly worked, Catherine, could she withstand the pressure of KPIs and harsh reality? Or would she break down within the first month? A week after taking the position, I arrived at the foundation office at 7:30 a.m. Staff members were already there. Sophia was discussing scholarship plans with a group of young employees. The working atmosphere was quiet and focused, and I silently thanked my grandfather for choosing the right people. But when the clock struck 8:30, the official start time, all three members of the Morgan family finally walked in. My father still carried his businessman's demeanor, a neat suit, tidy tie, cold face. My mother wore an expensive fur coat, her heels clacking like a drumbeat of authority. And Catherine arrived 20 minutes late, latte in hand, eyes glued to her phone. Sophia glanced at me. I nodded slightly, signaling her to let me handle it. That morning, Catherine was assigned to call 3 community centers to schedule events. But only 10 minutes later, I heard her voice in the hallway. Hey, you're the intern, right? You call all these centers for me. I'm busy. I've got to check my friends' schedules. The young intern's face turned pale, stammering. But Ms. Sophia said this is part of your KPI. Catherine rolled her eyes, snapped her fingers. God, don't you get it? Someone like me can't sit around making trivial calls? Do it then, put my name down. I stepped out, my voice firm. No, Catherine. This is your task. You must complete your own KPI. No one can do it for you. She raised her eyebrows, sneered. What, you think you're the police here? Don't forget, I've got just as much standing in this family as you. I looked her straight in the eye. Maybe in the family, but here everyone is an employee, and everyone is responsible for their own work. That afternoon, while Sophia and I were reviewing expense reports, my mother barged in with a proposal to hold a fundraising event at a 5-star hotel costing nearly $200,000. Now this is the Morgan style, she said proudly. We must save face. We can't host some cheap banquet. I kept calm. The foundation's budget doesn't allow that. We aim for effectiveness, not extravagance. A modest event, optimized costs, but still impactful. My mother let out a bitter laugh. Impact. Do you think people will donate at some cheap buffet? I won't accept being told what to do by someone earning $30,000 a year. The room went heavy. Staff avoided eye contact, leaving only Sophia tapping her pen to break the tension. I took a deep breath and replied, Here, every decision is based on transparency and accountability. If you want to propose something, it must go through the approval process like everyone else. My mother flushed red, threw the proposal onto the table, and stormed out, leaving behind a strong trail of perfume. The next day, my father was assigned to find 3 potential business partners. Sophia gave him a report form to fill in company details, financial capacity, collaboration opportunities. He skimmed it and frowned. I have to fill this out. I once ran a company with hundreds of employees, not assist with paperwork. Sophia gently explained, Mr. Richard, this is the standard requirement. We need consistent data for the review board. My father turned to me, his gaze sharp. You really want your father reporting to you? Have you forgotten who raised you? I felt the whole office freeze, all eyes on us. My heart pounded, but I couldn't back down. Yes, Father. Here you are, also an employee. I'm not belittling you, I'm carrying out grandfather's wishes. Reports are the only way to ensure transparency. If you don't do it, it means you've failed your KPI. My father narrowed his eyes, silent. Then he snatched the form, crumpled the corner slightly, but still took it with him. For 3 consecutive days, Catherine arrived late. My mother failed to submit a detailed budget report. My father submitted incomplete partner reports. I summoned all 3 into the meeting room with Sophia as witness. Father, Mother, Catherine, this is an official warning. If violations continue, I will apply the PIP Performance Improvement Plan, just like any other employee. Catherine gasped. You're kidding. Write me on a PIP? I'm a Morgan daughter. My mother slammed the table. Enough, I will not be treated like some low-level employee. This family was born to lead, not to work for wages. My father chuckled dryly, but I could see the vein throbbing at his temple. I kept my voice calm, but each word was firm. Boundaries aren't meant to humiliate anyone. They are the rails for growth. If you refuse to step on these rails, then I'll have no choice but to consider you forfeiting your rights under the will. Looking at the 3 faces before me, I felt both pain and relief. Pain because they still didn't understand the true meaning my grandfather wanted to pass on. Relief because for the first time, I was no longer afraid to face them. I had learned to stand firm. My grandfather had given me not just assets, but the right to set boundaries. The air in the room thickened as if waiting for a bomb to go off. My mother screamed, Catherine sobbed. My father clenched his jaw in silence. I knew for certain the explosion would come. But who would ignite it first? My mother, my father, or Catherine? That evening, the office lights were off, only the glow from the upper floor spilled into the hallway. I sat in the small lounge of the Morgan Foundation, holding a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The door creaked open, and Catherine walked in. Her eyes were swollen mascara smudged and not yet wiped clean. Jessica, she said softly, her voice tired. We need to talk. It wasn't the usual bitter tone, but something fragile, almost real. I nodded and pointed to the chair across from me. I took a deep breath and spoke. You know, Catherine, my whole childhood felt like living under dim lights. I studied hard-won awards, worked myself to exhaustion, but all eyes were always on you. I had to try twice as hard just to get half the recognition, and in the end, it still wasn't enough. My hand trembled slightly, but I didn't stop. You were praised just for wearing a pretty dress while I was written about in the newspapers, but our parents never kept a single clipping. I once thought I was crazy, thought I was selfish for resenting that you were loved while I wasn't. But when I read Grandpa's journals, I realized I was right. He saw everything, and it hurts that our parents didn't. Catherine sat still, eyes glistening. After a while, she whispered, her voice hoarse, I never asked to be the favorite. Really, they gave it to me, and I just took it. I liked dresses, parties, being adored, and I knew none of it was because I deserved it, only because I was Catherine. I got so used to receiving that I forgot what it cost you. I looked at her. For the first time, I didn't see the arrogant, spoiled sister. I saw a lost girl, like a child who had played too long under stage lights. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Words from the heart spilled out uncoded. I told her about my college graduation, where our parents were absent because she had a slight cold. Catherine admitted she had often felt guilty, but chose silence, afraid that speaking up would cost her the favoritism. I recalled nights spent at the hospital caring for Grandpa. She confessed she avoided it because she was terrified of facing death. I admitted I once hated her so much I couldn't look at her, and she admitted she mocked me to cover her guilt. Not every wound healed, but for the first time, we truly saw each other. From a psychological perspective, this was a conversation dismantling a distorted family script. Our parents had unconsciously cast the roles. Catherine, as the light receiver, handed resources, praise, and privilege. Jessica, as the light giver, through effort working invisibly to uphold the family's image. Both were harmed. Catherine believed she was special, but actually lived with the anxiety of losing favor one day. Jessica believed she was invisible, leading to deep self-esteem wounds. This conversation was the first step in decoding that script, recognizing that we were both products of our parents' anxiety and control. At one point, Catherine held my hand and whispered, "I don't know if I can change, Jessica. I'm so used to being spoiled, but for the first time, I'm afraid of losing you. I don't want us to be enemies for life." My heart tightened. I wasn't ready to fully trust her sincerity, but at least a crack of light had broken through. I replied, "You don't have to change everything at once, but start by taking responsibility for your work. Not to please anyone, but to find yourself again." We sat quietly in the dim room, listening only to the soft hum of the fan. For the first time in years, the silence between me and Catherine wasn't heavy, it carried possibility. But would this conversation be enough to spark real change? Or tomorrow, when the familiar stage lights called her name, would Catherine return to the person she had always been? One weekend afternoon, as I was still arranging my grandfather's library, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I saw a woman in her 70s, tall, her silver hair neatly tied back, dressed in a simple yet elegant ash gray suit. Her eyes were sharp, but her smile immediately made me feel at ease. "You must be Jessica, right? I'm Beatrice Fontaine, a friend of Howard's, for more than a decade." Her name startled me. I had heard my grandfather mention the judge friend a few times, but I had never met her. "He asked me, after he was gone, to come and see you." We sat in the living room, the soft golden light of sunset spilling over family photographs. Beatrice pulled a worn folder from her bag. 3 years ago, Howard accidentally overheard a conversation between your parents. They were discussing how to maximize their share and cut down yours. He came back, his face heavy, and told me, "If I don't do something, Jessica will be buried forever." I choked up. The image of my grandfather, frail but still scribbling notes, flashed before me, and I understood he had long seen what the future would look like if he didn't prepare. Howard planned in silence for 3 years. He arranged every legal detail, had his mental capacity tested, regularly recorded videos, and asked me to oversee everything. All to make sure you had a real chance. Her voice was calm, each word sinking deep into me. Beatrice wasn't only there to deliver information. She looked straight at me, her gaze warm but firm. "Jessica, I know you're strong, but strength alone only leads to exhaustion. You need to learn how to lead, how to protect yourself through the law, and most importantly, how to manage your emotions so you don't turn into a rigid version of your father." In that moment, I realized I had never truly had someone to train and shield me. My grandfather had been my spiritual anchor, but he was gone now. Beatrice appeared like a new safety net, a guiding hand to keep me from losing my way. Beatrice walked straight to my grandfather's desk. She pressed a small wooden notch, and I gasped as a hidden compartment sprang open. Inside was another journal completely different from the ones I had found before. I opened the first page. "The greatest mistake of my life was not interfering when Richard and Eleanor spoiled Catherine too much and neglected Jessica. I told myself it was their right as parents. But my silence allowed injustice to become a system. My hands trembled as I read on. I saw Jessica's efforts, but her light was always overshadowed. I let her fight alone. I hope one day she understands it was never her fault, but ours, the adults who stayed silent. Tears streamed down my face. This wasn't just evidence. It was recognition carved into my very bones. Beatrice placed her hand on my shoulder. Howard regretted it, but he left you not only assets, but also a lesson. Don't stay silent. When you see injustice, act. And now you have the right and the duty to do differently. She told me about her years as a judge facing the powerful standing firm under pressure. Leadership isn't always the loudest voice, Jessica. Sometimes it's the only voice that refuses to stay silent. In therapy, a figure like Beatrice is called a corrective mentor. When a child grows up without an emotional safety net, the right teacher at the right time can rebuild that inner structure. For me, Beatrice was that person reconstructing the protective fence my parents had torn down. She gave me an experience I'd never known. Not every elder ignores, not every power manipulates. Some use power to lift others. I held the journal to my chest, feeling the presence of both my grandfather and Beatrice at once. For the first time, I didn't feel alone on this battlefield. He had seen me. She was training me. And I asked myself, with real support, would I lead differently? Would I become a cold leader or a guide who heals? Beatrice stood, her eyes stern but full of hope. You have the truth, the tools, the legacy. The question now is, how will you use them? I looked out the window where the city lights shimmered in the night. When I'm truly supported, how will I lead differently? The answer lay ahead, and it would decide not only my fate, but the future of the Morgan family. On a Monday morning, I assigned my father the task of visiting a small manufacturing workshop in the suburbs, one of the projects funded by the foundation's seed capital. He frowned. Me going to such a shabby workshop? Back in the day, people lined up to meet me at the main office. I only nodded, yes, father. But if you don't go, your KPI won't be met. Grandfather started from a workshop even shabbier than that. He stayed silent, reluctantly leaving. The workshop was only half the size of a tennis court, smelling faintly of machine oil. The owner, a middle-aged man, led him around with enthusiasm. We were close to bankruptcy, but thanks to the Morgan Foundation's grant, we've been able to hire 3 more workers. This is the new press machine. It saves 40% on electricity. My father froze, his hand lightly touching the machine's frame, a flicker of memory in his eyes. The owner had unknowingly stirred something deep inside him. When he returned, he sat in the office, his voice heavier than usual. Jessica, today I saw myself 30 years ago. I realized, for too long, I've been chasing parties and flashy contracts, forgetting the real feeling of the early days of building a business. He didn't look at me only out the window. But I knew it was the first time my father retreated from his proud armor, admitting he had drifted from his core values. A week later, my mother was invited to a scholarship ceremony. She arrived in her usual fashion, an elegant black dress, a string of pearls gleaming at her neck. I worried she would show off again. But then, a third-year student, the daughter of a poor seamstress, stepped onto the stage telling her story of struggle to study law. Her voice trembled, but her eyes shone. I once thought of dropping out to help my mother, but this scholarship saved me. I will try to become a lawyer who protects the vulnerable. When she bowed in gratitude, I saw my mother stunned. The pearls around her neck suddenly seemed heavy. After the ceremony, she sought out the student, asking a few scattered questions. I noticed her hand trembling as it touched the girl's shoulder. That evening, my mother sat in the living room, removing the pearl necklace and setting it on the table. She whispered almost to herself, I was once like her, a girl from the countryside with nothing. Then I forgot. I didn't intervene. Sometimes silence is the chance for the past to echo back. Meanwhile, Catherine was assigned to organize her first fundraising event. The budget was strictly capped $30,000, not a cent more. At first, she protested fiercely, "Me hosting an event with such a tiny budget, my friends will laugh me to death." But Sophia was firm. "The budget is the budget. Show us you can do it." Catherine gritted her teeth. For 2 weeks, I saw her for the first time rushing around, calling vendors, comparing prices, negotiating with volunteers. One day, she sat slumped in the office, her hands smudged with ink from writing thank you cards by hand. On the day of the event, the room wasn't dazzling, like the $1 million galas my mother had hosted. It was only the hall of a local college, with neat tables and warm yellow lights. But the atmosphere was heartfelt. Attendees didn't just donate, they listened to the stories of scholarship students shedding tears at their words of gratitude. At the end, Catherine stood on stage. No ball gown, no flashing cameras, just a microphone and a trembling voice. Today I realized the value of an event isn't in the venue, but in the hearts it touches. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity." Applause thundered. I saw in my sister's eyes a strange new light, genuine self-respect, no longer an illusion born of privilege. What happened to all three of them was no accident. It was proof of a neurological mechanism, intrinsic reward. My father no longer felt excited signing $1 million contracts, but when he saw a small workshop come back to life. My mother no longer chased dopamine from admiring glances at lavish parties, but from touching the dream of a girl who reminded her of herself long ago. Catherine no longer thrilled at designer bags, but at the applause for her genuine effort. Their brains were slowly being retrained from superficial display to the joy of contribution. Watching the three of them change, I felt both surprised and cautious, because I knew this progress was fragile. One mocking remark from friends, one judgmental look from society could drag them back into the old pit. But I also understood every journey begins with a single step. And today, I had seen the first steps. Late that night, I sat alone in the office, writing in my journal. Father grew quiet before the press machine. Mother took off her pearls. Catherine smiled because of real applause. But will these green shoots survive the storm of saving face from society? Or will they fall back toward false glitter? The answer was still unwritten. One Friday afternoon, my mother attended a tea party with her close friends at a luxury hotel. When she came home, her face was heavy. "Jessica," she said bitterly, "do you know what people are saying about us? That the Morgan family now hosts events at community colleges, tightening belts like ordinary people. They're calling us downgraded." I saw her hand clutching her handbag, her nails almost digging into the leather. For my mother's status in the eyes of high society was oxygen. She exhaled sharply. "I've already contacted a planner I know. They can stage a gala at the Metropole Hotel costing about $300,000. Just one dazzling night and we'll restore our standing." My chest tightened. I knew if I let her do this, all efforts at building transparency would collapse. The next morning, I called a full staff meeting, including my father, mother, and Catherine. The conference room was packed, the atmosphere tense. Sophia sat beside me, her eyes full of support. I turned on the projector and presented 2 charts, costs and outcomes of the last 3 events. The previous luxury gala organized by my mother, $250 spent $281, raised only $30,000 net gain. Catherine's recent event, $30,000 spent $110,000, raised $80,000 net gain, nearly 3 times more efficient. A direct scholarship ceremony cost $5,000, but generated free media coverage worth 5 times that. I spoke slowly. These are the numbers. We can chase glittering lights, or we can choose to make real impact. The Morgan Foundation doesn't exist to flaunt. It exists to help. My mother flushed red. "Jessica, you don't understand. In our circles, image matters more than numbers. People donate for prestige, not for dry statistics." I looked her straight in the eye. But are you sure? At the college gala, people donated more because they heard real stories, not because of crystal chandeliers. She fell silent, though her eyes still wrestled inside. The tension was so thick, I could hear the ticking of the clock. Suddenly, my father spoke, his voice slow but firm. Eleanor, the girl is right. When I visited the workshop, I saw the faith in their eyes. That was real outcome. We've forgotten the most important thing: results must speak, not glitter. The room froze. For the first time, my father openly stood on my side. I saw Sophia's eyes flash while my mother looked as though she had been yanked out of a dream. Throughout the meeting, Catherine sat quietly twisting her coffee cup. I didn't know what she was thinking. At times, her eyes leaned toward my mother as if still craving glamour. But then when she looked at the efficiency charts on the screen, I caught a strange flicker in her eyes, the hesitation of someone caught between two worlds. From a psychological perspective, my mother was like someone addicted to image. Admiring glances from high society had become her dopamine, and when the old order pressed in, she easily relapsed. The only antidote was data transparency. When numbers expose the truth, illusions have no place to hide. This is the crucial anti-addiction mechanism, replacing false rewards with concrete evidence. The meeting ended, my mother said nothing more quietly, leaving the room. My father stood beside me for the first time, patting my shoulder. Let the results speak. Catherine still sat there, her eyes wavering. I knew the next battle wasn't only with my mother, but with Catherine herself. Would she choose the side of glamour to be adored by her friends, or the side of values to truly find herself?